Iko Nini. So kulikuwa na hii article ilikuwa kwa the Sunday Nation ya May 11th. Ilikuwa talk of town, CS buys 100 million city property, and ikaendelea a cabinet secretary who secured his position last year following President William Ruto's reconstitution of the top team appears to have become an overnight millionaire. Those close to him were recently shocked when he purchased a building in a city for 100 million shillings. The CS, who holds a lucrative portfolio, is known to have the ear of an influential opposition politician and has emerged as one of the most vocal defenders of the government. An aide was overheard discussing the latest development, revealing that his boss made a one-off payment for the property in foreign currency. So let's think about this. A few people walikuja cause inamaanisha walikuja juu ya broad-based government. So a few of the people that walikuja juu ya broad-based government, na number one of course ni Joho. Joho was a billionaire. So unajua how he made his billions? I don't know. Alafu kuna nani tena? And yes, so now we are left with three characters. We are left with Oparanya. Alafu apart from Oparanya tunachua na Mbadi. Alafu from Mbadi tunachua na msee wa stima, Opiyo Wandayi. And Oparanya, of course, I think juu alikuwa governor. Can we call him an overnight millionaire? Because unajua governorship ya Africa vile huwaga ama ya Kenya. Of course, I'm sure there's a lot of that ended up happening. So yes, inamaanisha corruption. So yeye pia siwezi mchukua. So now we are left with two characters. And these two characters are some of the biggest supporters of the president. Number one, we have Msewa Energy. Kumbuka vile Msewa Energy alikuwa na defend stories za Adani. So we have Opiyo Wandayi. Alafu number two, we have CS Mbadi. And now, according to Wase online, and these are allegations, Wase wengi wanasema that ule msalibai property ni CS Mbadi. Of course, vile nimesema ni allegations, but is there a reasoning behind that? Yes, if there's a CS who bought property, influential, alafu has the ear of an influential or politician. Of course, the influential politician in this case would be Raila, influential opposition politician. That would be Raila. And so we are left with a situation, is it Mbadi? Is it Opiyo Wandayi? A lot of people have settled on Mbadi, and Mbadi so far amekuwa one of the biggest vocal supporters of the president. Hata majuzi kwa funeral ya huo msana anaitwa Ngondo Were, kuna vile walienda kwa clash, like Mbadi aliclash na Sifuna, unacheki. Alafu of course baadaye Raila mwenyewe akasema that Sifuna is talking for the opposition, and when he says something, that's what the opposition means. So yes, if it's that, I guess this is Kenya. So what can we say? Good for him. Because I think I talked about legalized corruption in this country, and if those allegations are anything to go by, because talking of corruption, of course kuna msee moja ule, according to mimi, you represent the impunity in this country, and impunity is corruption in a different format. And the guy that I'm talking about, of course, ni msa anaitwa ATWOLI. And ATWOLI kuna vile amekuwa kiclash sana na udem anaitwa Hanifa, and through that people have been digging his stuff. And kuna hii post yake ilikuwa 11th April 2024, na ilikuwa Francis Atwoli, I import my clothes from Nigeria and Geneva. Alafu hii I think ina go back to ile kitu tulikuwa tunasema. I think earlier this week vile tuli have boy wa Mtaani TV, ama tuseme jana, na nilikuwa nabonga juu ya vile kuna wasi wamekuwa kiteta juu ya wasi wa OCHA kukuja kuran Kenya na kuran Nairobi, na vile hao wanakuwa easily impressed na vitu za kipumbavu. And I think a perfect example is this. Unacheki, when you take pride in your clothes being imported from Geneva, unacheki clothes, these are clothes. The clothes are supposed to, number one, cover your nakedness. Number two, make you look good. Can you look good with clothes from Kenya? Yes, you can. Najua, kuna kugana say, hawajanilipa, I think wanaitangwa Zekino. Zekino have some really good products. Nacheki. Yes, and of course kuna a lot of local designers. Kuna t-shirt kwa nimevaa, or like the previous video ilikuwa msee fulani anajiita Grit 254. Umse wa Grit 254, like his hoodies are so crazy, cause wachika hii hoodie yangu vile ni simple, it's just the logo and what this guy takes his time, like hoodies zake, like kuna way anazitengeneza na put like extra fabric on top, and it's just crazy, like looks really creative. And yes, that's a local designer. All this nonsense that we need to import clothes from Nigeria pia wako, we import our clothes from Kenya, because it's nonsense. You don't need to import your clothes from somewhere for them to look good. If you're importing them because they're cheap and they're affordable, that makes sense. But this guy would never take pride in his clothes being affordable. This is the sort of guy to take pride in his clothes being super expensive, because that makes him like feel some sort of way, like nguo zangu ni iko nene, nacheki ufala zingine zile hazifai kuwa. So kulikuwa na hiyo. Alafu pia kitu moja ile Hanifa alikuwa amepost ilikuwa ni he drives a 30 million Mercedes yet he speaks for the working poor. And this is a very important fact, that Mumsi anafaa kutalk for all those people in industrial area. The guys who end up wakifanya kazi wanafungiwa, unajua, in very dangerous places where they're dealing with chemicals with no safety gear. Like, someone needs to actually follow up on people who work at industrial area. I'm sure there's a lot of them who end up battling like cancer na vitu kama hizo, because hakuna protective gear. And if they ask for protective gear, don't forget that Kenya is a country where there is no enough employment for everyone, so you can't go demanding for stuff. Hawezi enda pale kwa like, if you don't give me protective gear, I'm not going to do this job. Utambo ishia. Baki umeenda tu kule unaishia. So you can try and imagine how many people have died because of such stuff. And the guy who's supposed to represent them is out here thumping his chest, telling us he buys clothes from Geneva, and apart from that, driving a 30 million Mercedes Benz. You see, this is the nonsense that we are dealing with, and this is the mediocrity that we've come to accept. And Kenya, something has to change, because hatuwezi acha like every sector like is run by someone who's just out there for self-interest. Because ukiangalia countries kama states, majuzi nilikuwa very surprised, because states kuna kuwaga na unions, and unions are supposed to negotiate. They are the ones who negotiate for things like minimum wage na vitu kama hizo. So nilikuwa surprised that mse alianza kupush story ya minimum wage, which is also called a living wage, ilikuwa Henry Ford. Because Henry Ford wanted to create competition between his company Ford and the rest. He wanted to show that Ford was the best employer. So he's the guy who started ile concept ya living wage. Nacheki, Kenya, we don't even pay a living wage. People are just paid whatever they are paid. And apart from that, employers don't even have to pay you. Like, come, if your employer is paying you, just know they're doing you a favor. Because they're like, I'd sue you if they don't pay me. Then what would the court system do? The case will just be stuck in the court system. And if those people feel like hii case ina drag sana, si watapigia tu mse anaitwa ATWOLI and then cheze na yeye kama yeye, alafu so getting justice becomes like this very elusive thing that most of us will never get. And talking of justice, if something interesting has happened recently, of course, imekuwa history ya Ongondowere and the fact that the suspects in his case were caught super fast. But apart from the suspects being caught super fast, what was interesting was on Monday, kuna vile Charles Owino alikuwa kwa Fixing the Nation, and he said something interesting. Alisema whoever ordered the shooting of Kasipul MP Charles Were must be very thick. You send someone to kill an MP and you let the killer still live freely until he's arrested? Normally, those sent to do such dirty jobs are always silenced almost immediately to avoid giving information like mentioning who sent them. So this is a former government spokesman, not government spokesman, a former police spokesman telling us, advising thugs on how to do their job. So yes, these are sort of characters that we have in this country, where unafikiria tuko na inchi, kumbe tuko na watu tu wa ajabu. So yeah, Iko Nini. So kwa majuna unatry kutuma pesa Kenya, the best platform kutumia ni LemFi, because LemFi ukupatiaga the best exchange rates, na apart from that pia inakupatia the highest limits to send. Uzabaki umesend $8,000 in one day, hiyo ni close to around 1 million shillings, ama $16,000 in 1 week, hiyo ni around 2 million shillings, ama $32,000 in 1 month, hiyo ni around 4 million shillings. So try kuimagine unafanya kitu kama construction hapa Kenya, LemFi unachangamka nayo haraka haraka. Alafu pia kitu moja poa na LemFi ni saa hizi kuna vile zabaki pia umetumia till na pia pay bill za M-Pesa, ubaki umelipa bills ukiwa huko masaid za US. So tumewe ulipiaga familia yako internet, ama unalipia stima, unalipa ukiwa huko, na ubaki umetake advantage of those good exchange rates that I was talking about. But pia kuna kitu moja inaitangwa cashback. So for your first $100 transaction ukituma utabaki umepatiwa $20 cashback. Alafu pia in that same transaction kuna vile utabaki umesupport Iko Nini, because Iko Nini pia tutabaki tumepata $20. Na story behind hii ni kitu inaitwa referral. So tumia referral code Iko Nini. Nacheki simple tu hivyo, Iko Nini as one word, na utabaki umepata $20 cashback on your first transaction ya $100 and above. Na pia Iko Nini tabaki tumepata kitu, so utakuwa umetusupport. So unangoja nini? Tumia LemFi. LemFi, international payments for everyone. Iko Nini. So one interesting thing about his story ya Ongondowere ni they've arrested 11 people. They've arrested 11 people in less than I think 11 days. Like that's how fast they've done it. Yes, because I think hii Wednesday sasa leo ndio inamaliza exactly 2 weeks since umse adedishwe. So yes, walikuwa wamearrest more than 11 people in 11 days. And this is interesting because when you think about mse kama Msando, and the fact that Msando died like 8 years ago and no single person has ever been arrested, he come to stories of Msando, and no one even remembers Msando, not the opposition and of course not the government, because the government of the day benefited from that death. Najua the government of the day being Uhuru Kenyatta, the government of the day being Ruto, because hakuna vile kitu kama hiyo inge happen na the president asijue na NIS wasijue like who ended up committing that crime. Because remember, it come to history ya Ngondo, as I'm saying, like less than 11 days and they've already arrested 11 people. And hii kitu ni interesting because kulikuwa na history ya like ase wale wanajitetea hako wanataka judge, and the judge has refused to recuse herself. And this is what one of the things I find to be really interesting about law, that a judge can refuse to recuse herself. And yes, it's just business as usual, considering how corrupt this country is. I feel like if anyone feels like you're biased, you're just supposed to do the honorable thing and be like, you know what, let me just step aside. But wacha tusikize.
They were first arraigned last week Thursday at the JKIA law courts alongside 3 others, following their arrest on Wednesday in separate locations. However, Abel Ochieng, the director of the Lake Basin Development Authority, and Edwin Oduor filed a preliminary application seeking the recusal of Chief Magistrate Irene Gishobi, alleging bias in her conduct. This came after the magistrate dismissed an earlier bid by the duo, challenging the court's territorial jurisdiction and seeking the transfer of the case to the Kibera Law Court or another court with a proper jurisdiction. Magistrate Gishobi, however, rejected the recusal application, paving the way for the state to proceed with its request for custodial orders. In its application, prosecution sought to detain the suspect for 30 days, arguing that they played a central role in the planning and execution of the legislator's murder. Abel Ochieng is believed to have facilitated the planning meetings, while Edwin Ochieng is linked to the murder weapon. The court instead...
So, yeah, we reporter Joe. But yes, so I'll say watakuwa held for 23 days, and history ya kuhold say because they are going to tamper with investigations. Na ifindigi ikiwa super weird. Najua like if I'm going to tamper with these investigations, I can still tamper with them when I'm in the cell. I find it like to be such a lazy way of doing stuff, but of course it's part of the Kenyans way of doing things, so it is what it is. But yes, it's interesting to see that this guy who had so many cases, najua, against him, hakuwahi guzwa, hakuwahi pelekwa kotini, hakuwahi nini. As soon as he himself leaves us, then watu wake, like just 2 minutes, watu washakuwa arrested, 2 minutes, watu washafikishwa kotini, 2 minutes. It's actually very disturbing. Najua, nilikuwa nataka kusema interesting to see, but what I meant, it's very disturbing. Because inamaanisha justice can actually happen in this country, like things can actually move, but it means that things don't move, and they don't move intentionally because the government does not want them to move. So yes, in your story ya Ongondowere, I think by the time they're through with this guy, because kuna ule msanii Aroko pia iko ndani, so like yeah, wanashinda tu wakirusha wase ndani. And but now tukikam to hizi stories za political matters, ukitaka kujua tunaishi kwa nchi ya kipumbavu na nchi ile watu wagamechizi. Kuna hii title niliona ama headline, and I actually could not believe my eyes. And the funny thing is the headline was actually true. And what was the headline? The headline was DIDMUS BARASA actually said that nobody is above the law in this country. Kumbuka, uni ule mse siku ya election in 2022 alienda hapa amededisha mse, alafu akahepa Uganda because he was not sure that William Samoei Ruto was going to be declared president. And as soon as Samoei Ruto was declared president, he knew he was safe from prosecution and he came back. This guy went to K24 and said that nobody is above the law. Scary amount of disrespect to Kenyans.
Insofar as the killings of the young people are concerned, Parliament will put our feet down and said there is nobody who is above the law in this country. Whether you are a police officer, by whatever rank, you must be accountable. And the agencies that are supposed to investigate police officers is the IPOA, which carried out the investigations. They gave out their report. There are some files which, the IPOA did the investigations and forwarded their file to DPP for recommendations for prosecution. But DPP returned those files to IPOA with a recommendation which is procedurally. Some files were recommended to be taken for an inquest. Others, some very valid, very important documents and sections of the investigations was missing.
So unasikia mse, uni mse anasema nobody is above the law in this country. This guy actually had the cojones to say that. And this just goes to show you how bold impunity is in this country. That this is someone who, in a working system, in a working country, in a country where justice actually means something, this person would be in jail. But instead, this person is out here lecturing us and trying to teach us about how no one is above the law. And now we are stuck in this situation that we are stuck in. So, this is one of the stories ile nilicheki nikabaki nimejiscratch kichwa nikishindwa that ni ujinga gani uendeleaga kwa hii country yetu. Najua. And at some point, will we actually have reach a level where Kenyans see beyond this? Because I won't lie to you, if this guy runs in 2027, the probability that he'll win again is very high. Why? Because I don't know if we've been desensitized, ama I don't know kama tunajidharau as civilians, because we'll have a situation whereby Kenyans will, like everyday Kenyans, wase wale, someone like this does not value, would still elect him to go. Alafu, watu wanajuaga, as long as the president is there, and as long as they vote in parliament the way that he wants them to vote, they know they're protected, because they know that anyone who can understand stuff anajua that in Kenya right now the legislative arm na the judiciary zote zina work under the president's instructions. That's why unacheki even as soon as UDA and Gachagwa's case was dismissed, kuna statement ya UDA ilitokea. Statement ya UDA ya kujifanyisha ni kama wamejam, hiyo ni story. Asa wamefurahia kabisa because they are hoping that of course now wamefurahi because it's the president who wanted this guy to get back in the game, because they're hoping if he gets back in the game he can have that dream of being president. That is like Gachagua akuwe na dream ya kuwa president, and in the process I end up split the mountain, and the president is hoping that would be enough to help him, like splitting the opposition. But the funny thing is, right now, even if you split the opposition, as long as you don't get 50% plus one, it still becomes tricky. But I think maybe this guy thinks that through that he can still be able to somehow manipulate the numbers and get 50% plus one. But I don't know. What I know is, so far kumekuwa na characters like Kagombe, got away with murder juu ya the president. DIDMUS BARASA getting away with murder because of being friends with the president. So yes, we are stuck in this situation, and it is what it is. Iko Nini.